Hey everyone, welcome to episode 7 of The Screams Continue. This is our final episode. Scott, our final episode, number 7. Can you believe it?
It's bittersweet. I got to tell you, I've really enjoyed this. I think we both enjoyed it. Just reminiscing about old times, reminiscing about an incredible documentary that really is ageless. And the whole new generation of people are watching this. It seems like it's doing extremely well. There's a good following.
Yeah.
And it gives the people a little bit more chance to see things and hear things they've never even heard of.
Yeah, especially with the raw interviews we did. Those were so much fun to just relive those interviews because we did those 17, 18 years ago. Most of the stuff I didn't remember, so it was great to hear those interviews again and see those folks. And thanks for being with us through these episodes. We really appreciate it. So I don't want to go into too much detail. We got a big surprise today. We have a very, very special guest. We're very lucky to have this lady on with us today. Scott, what do you think?
This is a treat, and it's really an honor. And I don't want to give it away either, but I'm really looking forward to this. When you started telling me that we have this connection and that she might be available, it fills a spot that we missed in the documentary. And again, we only had so much time. If we ever were to do this, go back in time and do it again, this would be like a 10-series documentary. Yeah. But her interview is going to be phenomenal, and I'm looking forward to talking to her.
Yeah, back when we did Season of Screams, neither Scott or I, or even Ted, who was our producer, knew about this person. Her name didn't come up in any of the research that we were doing. We only learned about her, I'm not even sure how many years after the documentary was released, but she has a great story. She was there from day one of Halloween Haunt.
I'm really excited about this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, the very first witch of Knott's Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt, Diana Kelly.
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Dave. This is my partner, Scott.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Scott, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's always fun to talk about Halloween Haunt, one of my favorite places and times in my life, for sure.
We have been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard after learning about you after so many years ago, when Ted Doherty finally met you and started telling the stories, I was really disappointed that we weren't able to know about you or meet you back when we were doing Season of Scream. So it's really great that we can kind of catch up now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, where's your background? Before you actually came into Knott's, were you studying to be an actress? Where was your background?
I did take one acting class, but I was a miserable failure because I couldn't remember any lines. So it didn't work out so well. But no, I was really interested in radio broadcasting, and I was in the radio and television program at Cal State Fullerton. And I was a full-time student and working at Knott's part-time. I started working at Knott's in October of '72 as a Puff and Stuff character. So the Puff and Stuff show was in the John Wayne Theater at the time, and they had walk-around characters outside to greet the children after each show. So the ones who were on stage were real legitimate actors, and we were just the $2 an hour folks who greeted the kids outside. And it was a lot of fun. That only lasted until December of '72. And after that, I was called back to be Whittles, which was an old miner character. Again, big head, big costume. And I did that for about a year. But while I was doing Whittles, I was Annie Oakley when the costume was being cleaned. And ultimately, I ended up announcing wagon camp shows as Annie Oakley and got out of the Whittles costume, which was wonderful. So at the time of the very first Halloween Haunt, I was Annie Oakley in Ghost Town, working with the Gunfighters, announcing country music shows in the wagon camp, and going to college full-time, except in the summertime when I worked at Knott's full-time. So by Halloween time of 1973, there were a few gunfighters on the streets. There were a couple of streetwalkers. That I was not one of them. and Annie Oakley. That was me. So we were the street people, the street characters in Ghost Town.
And who approached you with the idea of Halloween Haunt? Where did you first hear about it?
Well, I heard about it only after it was a done deal, but apparently, from what I understand, Gary Salisbury, Bill Hollingshead, and a few others were instrumental in cooking up this scheme, and it all came together very quickly, in about 6 weeks, I understand. But I only heard, those of us who were involved as monsters only heard about it a couple of weeks before it actually happened. So we had appointments with Gene, who was one of the gunfighters, but he was acting as a makeup artist in this case. We had appointments with Gene to get a plaster cast on our face so he could make prosthetic pieces for the monsters. And so he put plaster of Paris all over our face, stuck straws up our nose so we could breathe while it was hardening, and then took it off, and then he was able to make the plastic pieces for us.
And you're referring to Gene Witham, correct?
Yes, Gene Witham.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah,
No,
he was
no problem.
one of the gunfighters in Ghost Town, and he was pretty crazy. He was a lot of fun, very, very funny on the streets, and had a whip that he used as part of his gunfights. And he had been involved with Planet of the Apes. If you watch very closely, the very first film of Planet of the Apes, you'll see one of the apes has a whip, and that was Gene.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
So you got to watch that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when he was doing the makeup, I didn't know he even had a makeup background, but that was, he was a legitimate makeup artist in Hollywood. And when he was a makeup artist, he was all business. He was not the funny guy you saw on the streets of Ghost Town. He got down and he knew exactly what he was doing, and created some pieces for us.
When he cast your face, did he cast it as the witch who you came to be?
No, it's just what I have. What I have as a person. It's just a cast over your regular face.
Okay.
So then he takes the cast off, and then he could make the pieces that he wanted to make once he had that plaster cast. I guess they pour the latex into the cast to make the pieces.
Before we get into your witch character, which is the really compelling story, if you could just take us back to 1973, that very first Halloween Haunt opening night. If you could just kind of describe the feeling, the atmosphere, what was going through your mind at the time when all those people were running through the gates?
It was like being a little kid again, being out for trick-or-treating, because we were all dressed up in our costumes, and they had to close the farm down to let the special ticket people in, because it did require a special ticket for the evening. And we got our makeup done in the John Wayne Theater. I was sitting next to Seymour. Well, that was pretty neat.
Wow.
And Seymour was fantastic. He was real chatty, and he enjoyed being there with the rest of us we were all getting our makeup done right there in the theater in the backstage area. And so it was time to go out. We all went out. We were told to go out in pairs for safety reasons, because they didn't know how the crowds would respond to us, or if they would try and attack us or anything. And there were a few people who misbehaved a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. But yeah, we stayed in pairs, and we didn't really have any instructions except don't touch people, try and scare people, go in dark corners and yell boo, that kind of thing. It was real basic, but it was, the feeling of it was really like being a little kid again on Halloween. And Halloween's one of my favorite holidays, so it was perfect.
What a big playground you had at being at Knott's Berry Farm.
Absolutely, especially being in Ghost Town, because again, the first year was very basic, and the whole farm didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but the people in Ghost Town were just told, make your place look sort of scary. And so they put up some cobwebs, and the whole of Ghost Town looked very different than it normally did. It was spooky looking. So that was like having a whole, spooky playground to play in. It was really, it was fun.
Diana, one of the things about your character you ended up doing, which was the witch in 1973, and then the character was changed by the Green Witch in 1974. but that is one of the only characters that has lasted from 1973 to present day. I mean, after you stopped playing the witch, there's been several other witches. So take us through that, what was like at the beginning as you started developing that character. How much of that was actually you? You know, your personality coming out of there.
I think some of it probably was. I like comedy, and so I sort of tried to make her into more of the Witchy Poo type of character. I don't know if you recall Witchy Poo's character on the Puff and Stuff show. She was kind of a buffoon, but she had a real scary voice.
Right.
And her voice was similar to the Wicked Witch of the West and the Wizard of Oz. So those two voices were what I used as a model for my witch voice. In fact, that was the thing when they were casting the whole bunch of us. We all knew we were going to do something during Halloween Haunt, and it was just, well, you're going to be the mummy, and you're going to be the ape, and you're going to do this, and you're going to be the witch. And that's how I got, there was no audition. There was no choice in the matter. I was just told I would be the witch. And they said, oh, by the way, can you do a witch voice? I said, oh, yeah, sure, I can do a witch voice. So I had to acquire a witch voice kind of quickly. And I did that by watching the Puff and Stuff show on Saturday mornings. There were no VCRs in those days. This is 1973. So I just had a little cassette recorder, and I'd record Witchy Poo's voice on my cassette recorder, and then I'd play it back and try and imitate it, and I'd record myself. And I kept doing it until I felt like I sounded pretty close to Witchy Poo. But yeah, the character of the witch, I'd say, is sort of a combination of Witchy Poo and the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch.
That's great. And I've heard you do that voice a couple of times in recent days on some of the interviews, and maybe we might ask you to do that later, but
it doesn't take much for me to do that. I've done it on occasions probably when I shouldn't have to. So once when I was leaving my job, I was in a temporary position as a dean of a community college in San Diego. It was my last day of work. They had a little going away party for me, and somebody asked me to do the witch voice, and so I did, and it reverberated through the halls in the whole administrative building. And I didn't know this, but one of my English professors was waiting for me for a meeting, and he heard it. He said, "Was that you?"
That's awesome.
So yeah, I can do the witch voice anytime you ask.
That's great. That's great.
Well, and I just have a quick question. Were you ad-libbing as the scares you were learning how to scare? Because they gave you no instructions. They just said, go out there, don't hurt the guests, and have fun with it.
When we were out with the guests and just roaming the streets and scaring people, we weren't doing anything in particular. We weren't really even, I screamed at people, but that was about it. The witch character, the main thing that I was doing was the Market Street Monster Massacre, which was a gunfight that went through Ghost Town. And at the end of the gunfight, I was on the roof at the hotel at the end of the street. So I was at the very, very top of the roof, and the gunfighters, that was an adapted gunfight show that we did on the streets all the time, except it didn't involve me. It only involved the gunfighters. So normally the gunfighters would race down the street shooting and yelling, and they'd get to the roof, and eventually there'd be one gunfighter at the top of the roof, and a guy at the bottom would use a big shotgun and shoot him down, and he'd do a high fall, and that was the end of the show. Well, in this case, they substituted me as the witch for the guy who was on the top of the roof. So I was at the top of the roof, but luckily I didn't have to do that high fall. I just screamed at the end, and my line was a line that was told that I needed to do. And they didn't really say anything. They were just grunting and yelling, and then they shot me with a shotgun, and I just screamed. I think I did this first. I screamed and said, "Everybody knows that monsters never die." And I disappeared in a puff of smoke after they had shot me. So the whole point was that I didn't really get shot. I really just disappeared, and I'm going to be back.
I
And
remember
the witch
that.
has survived all these years, as you rightly pointed out.
Yes, and I remember my first time going was 1977, and I remember seeing that show, and I remember there was a gorilla in the show as well. I don't know if there was a gorilla when you did it, but I always found
Yeah,
that
one
funny.
of the guys was dressed up like a gorilla, and he was one of
Right.
the monsters who was running down the street with the others. Yeah, and that first year we only had 3 gunfighters in that show, just making as much noise as they could, running down the street and shooting off their guns.
All right, I'm going to put you full screen and have you just go ahead and do that little piece. Okay, anytime.
Okay, cover your ears. Everybody knows monsters never die.
That
Oh my-
was great.
Got that?
That's awesome. That is incredible.
It is everything.
Well, I should also give credit to Mark Dennis. The very first year I was doing The Witch, Mark Dennis from KEZY Radio was out there interviewing Seymour. He and Paul Freeman came for the radio station, and he wanted to interview the witch. And so they brought me over to Mark. Mark was very well respected as a disc jockey in LA and Orange County for many years. So it was kind of fun to meet him. But he said, all right, let me hear your witch voice. So I gave it to him, and he said, deeper. And I gave it to him. And anyway, he said, a little more energy, gave it to him. So he went into vocal coach mode, which he's very good at. And so he said, okay, I think you're ready. So then he interviewed me on the radio with the witch voice.
That's incredible.
So yeah, credit to Mark Dennis for helping me out in the very beginning.
So the very first year, 1973, Gene Witham did your face cast, and he created the witch character or prosthetics for you. Talk a little bit about that, because the very first year you were not green, and then you went green the following year. So it'd be good to hear that story.
Sure. Well, he created a face piece that went across my face, and it was flesh colored, and it just was real ugly. So it was very wrinkly and a big nose. The problem was, now Halloween Haunt was only 3 nights in those days. It wasn't a whole month or 6 weeks or however long. But anyway, at the end of it was put on there with spirit gum. At the end of the night, we had to very carefully peel it off so we could use it the next night. And boy, that was painful. So after the first Halloween Haunt, they figured out that having full face pieces or even partial face pieces was too difficult to maintain and difficult to take them off every night and put them back on the next day. So they went with nose and chin instead, the subsequent years. So the flesh color was the first year, and it was just intended to be ugly. The second year, I don't know why he turned me green, but he did. So he said, you are going to be green now. So I got green makeup, and you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
These are the originals from 1974. 1 green chin and 1 green nose. There we are. So
There's the Green Witch.
They still have the nice, huh?
That's
They
really
still have,
great.
yeah. That's quite a schnozzle there. Anyway,
It's amazing. It's amazing it's held up this long.
yeah, these are pretty thick. They're nice pieces. The flesh-colored piece I donated to the Knott's Halloween Haunt Museum for the 40th anniversary.
Oh,
So that still exists, but it was in kind of sad condition because it was thinner. It had to stretch across my face. These held up pretty well. So the witch stayed green from 1974 on.
After you gave up or you retired from the character of the Green Witch, I'd share with us what happened afterwards. But did you have anything that you passed on, like you passed the torch on to the next person that became the Green Witch?
Well, I don't think so, but what happened was kind of an interesting story. In 1973, 74, 75, I was the Green Witch in Ghost Town. So I was involved with, as I said, the Market Street Monster Massacre. I was also announcing shows in the Wagon Camp They had rock bands for, especially for Halloween, Hello People, the first 2 years, and then the Roto-Rooter Good Time Christmas Band was the third year. I'm not sure who came after that in Wagon Camp. But anyway, that's what I was doing the first 3 years. Well, I wanted to start a disco at Knott's because I'd been doing DJ work around Orange County. So I said, could I do the disco for the Halloween haunt? And the people I worked for in entertainment agreed, let's give it a shot and see how it goes. So I was over in the Airfield Eatery, which was brand new at the time. It was part of the new 20s area. And I was the disco witch. And that's where I stayed. I was not in Ghost Town that year, but I was still the Green Witch. Meanwhile, back in Ghost Town, my good friend Barb Best became the witch that year. So she had seen me do the witch the previous year and saw what I did. And so she took over all the stuff that I had been doing with the Market Street Monster Massacre. And I think she announced in Wagon Camp too. So, and she had a much better acting background than I did. So I think she had fun with it and probably made it her own. So Barb did it for, I guess, a couple of years. Karen Aikman did it after that for, I think, a couple of years. Then Karen got her sister, Charlene, to do it because Karen was in a more supervisory role in entertainment at that time. And she said to her sister, who was very wonderful person, but much more shy and introverted than her little sister, Karen. She said, oh, it'll only be for a short time. You can do it. Well, some 20 odd years later, Charlene was still doing the Green Witch in Ghost Town. So she was at it for a very long time, Charlene Parker. She did retire from that role just a few years ago. I think just a couple of years ago, and I don't know who's doing it now. But for that many years, there were only 4 of us who ever did the witch.
Well, I got to tell you, those are fond memories of Charlene as well, because she wasn't that vocal, but she had that movement where she looked like she was floating. She used her costume where you couldn't see her footsteps. And when she was chasing people, people were losing their minds. Like in the original DVD that we did, Season of Screams, we showed actual footage of people losing their minds. And Charlene never pushed it, but she would chase them. And when they would look back, you saw that fright. And she was great. Very physical scare.
She was a very different witch from my version, and I think, and Barb and Karen before her, because she was so silent. And I asked her when we got together one time, I said, what kind of voice did you use? She said, I didn't. I was silent. And she said, I think that was actually scarier. And I think she's right.
Yeah.
Because she said, I used to just sneak up on people. Well,
Yeah.
I did too, but I was loud. So we all had our own way of doing things.
Yeah. Charlene was responsible for one of my best scares at the haunt. She came up behind me and got me really good.
Oh, I'm sure. No,
yeah.
she enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, filming her for this for the documentary, and she's in quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
Some of the Ghost Town Streets footage, but yeah, good stuff. All right,
I was thrilled to get to meet Charlene after all those years because I knew her sister very well. We worked together. Karen and I worked together in Ghost Town, but I'd never met Charlene until I was called to an interview with Charlene as the first witch and the current witch. About 5 years ago, and it was really neat to meet Charlene.
Do you still keep in contact with the other witches?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We're all Facebook friends. We get together for reunions. Barb just hosted a reunion at her house about just about a year ago. And
Wow.
the gunfighters, the street people, all of the entertainers from that period of time, it was a really special period in Ghost Town with the gunfighters. A lot of those guys went on to Hollywood stunt work and did very well. And we all just had and still do have such a bond. It's always fun to get together. But yeah, we're all in touch.
One of the things that when Dave and I were researching this, and when we had the brainstorm of finally saying, well, we got to tell the story, it's that we were going every year, and we got, since the background is film and telling stories, when we started putting this together, it was because we went so many times, and we stopped going for the scare aspect. We started going to analyze analyze the monsters, the sets. And one of the things that we notice is that all the monsters, all the actors, they give it their all. And we often wondered, by the end of the night, first of all, where do they get all this energy? There must be, this is before all those caffeine drinks started coming through. But what was it like for, you're giving everything, and then at the end of the night, how do you even walk back to the makeup to get your makeup taken off the makeup booth?
It's exhausting, but it was so much fun. I think it was an adrenaline rush, but I don't know how we did it for 3 nights. And that was it. We were only doing 3 nights. How people did it for 6 weeks, I have no idea, because that would be really exhausting. But after 1 weekend of Halloween Haunt, it took me about 3 weeks to recover. Because you're not getting a lot of sleep, because we were still working during the day too. I didn't tell you that part. We were still gunfighters and streetwalkers and doing our normal day jobs, and then we'd get changed and do the haunt in the evening. But I think we were having so much fun, we didn't mind. But I don't know how you sustain that for 6 weeks. That would be tricky.
But I'd like to ask you. We get a kick out of talking to all the original people that started this thing. Do you have a fond memory of anything that just sticks out in your mind that is really that you would like to share with all the people?
I think we just had a real camaraderie. We all enjoyed working together so much. We were working during the day, and during the week, we all knew each other very well. It was a small group. Even when the group expanded the second year and the third year and the fourth year, we still, we knew each other really well. So it was just one more thing that we enjoyed doing together. So I think it's the camaraderie, which still exists to this day. I mean, when we all get together, it's like we're just sort of picking up where we left off, even though that was, 47 years ago now.
Oh my,
it's like it was yesterday. So I think in general, there isn't a specific memory, but just the fact that we enjoyed being together, and we were having fun. We looked out for each other. I mean, you had to. When you see somebody starting to attack one of the characters, you go over and help out. But that didn't happen very often. Mostly it was just having a lot of fun, being around each other and scaring people, and all of the fun that goes with Halloween. As a little kid, we had it as big kids. So that was neat.
Have you been back to the park since?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've been called back for Halloween Haunt interviews and things because of my being lucky to get that role the first year. But also, we've had a couple of reunions at Knott's, and I always enjoy going back to Knott's. It's like going home, because I was there for 5 years altogether. Even though I was part-time during the year, full-time in the summer, it's really, Knott's had such a great environment for all the workers. I think Mr. and Mrs. Knott created a really family-oriented environment, and they were known as Walter and Cordelia. And we had one of their grandsons, Daryl Anderson. He was Daryl. He wasn't Mr. Anderson. Everyone went by first names, and it was a really friendly and supportive environment for all the employees. And even though I was only part-time, we all got profit-sharing checks. We all got gift packs at Christmas time. It's just, they really valued their employees, and they showed it. And so I was making $2 an hour. And when I left, I think I was making $3.50 an hour about 5 years later. But I would have paid to do that job. I never told him that, but I would have. It was just a great environment and great opportunity and fantastic people.
What was it like to now know that since you started and until the last time you went to Knott's Berry Farm's Halloween Haunt, that you were part of history? You're part of the oldest, most successful, and largest Halloween event in the world. How does that make you feel?
Lucky. Just dumb luck. I mean, sometimes you're in the wrong place at the right time, and that's what happened with me. I was just sitting in the room, and they said, "You're going to be the witch." How did that happen? It beats me, but it's wonderful to be a part of history. But I couldn't say that I planned it. It was just luck. that I was there.
I just had, one of the things I wanted to mention is we interviewed Jan Cranston back for
Good.
the documentary, and she was a lovely lady, and she mentioned one of the things you mentioned about it being a bittersweet memory for her, and she wasn't sure about going back to Knott's for the Halloween Haunt anyway. I know she went back for reunions and things, but the Halloween Haunt was one of those things she wasn't quite sure about going back because it was such a great memory for her. She said bittersweet. So I was wondering if you had any similar experience to that.
I've actually never been back for Halloween Haunt. So when I said I'd been back to Knott's, the answer is yes. For Halloween Haunt, no. And
wow.
It's not that I didn't want to go back. It's just I wasn't living in Orange County anymore. It's difficult to get tickets, and I was actually kind of scared of people sliding into me. But I think it's an event that has evolved with its time, as it should. We couldn't keep doing the same things we were doing back in 1973. Times have changed. People have changed. What scares people is a little different today. So I think everything they've done is fantastic. But I haven't been back for Halloween Haunt. I've only seen the, videos and things of what goes on, but it just sounds spectacular. It'd be fun to see it sometime, but no, I wouldn't say bittersweet. I just have nothing but good memories of Halloween Haunt. But and Jan's a good friend. I mean, I saw her back in October too. She was at the reunion. So yeah, we worked together in Ghost Town, and we worked together in the first couple of Halloween Haunts too.
We didn't realize that when we put this program together, this episodes, that there's a whole new generation, and either it's from their families, from their parents that started going to haunt many, many years ago. It's just amazing how this new generation want to know about how it all started. And here we are talking with you, and just like with Bill and Jean and Gary, what wonderful stories. And I got to say, when you started talking about it, there's something that comes alive. And it's the same thing I've told Gary, Bill, and all the people we interviewed, that there's all of a sudden when you start talking about it, you can see the memories that are coming to your head, your memory of all the fun that you've had. That is an energy. That is like I'm feeling excited that we finally talked to you. So
right.
Yeah, can you imagine what it's like when we all get together? I mean, it's just it's a hoot. We're not just talking about memories when we get together. Some of it is about the haunt. Some of it is about things that happened in Ghost Town during gunfights and dumb things that we did and silly things we did. But it's just the atmosphere of and the bond that we all share. Even though we've all gone in many different directions, like I said, some of the gunfighters went on to very impressive careers as Hollywood stuntmen. The rest of us have done other interesting and unusual things in our lives, but we all have this camaraderie and this bond that comes right out whenever we get together. So yeah, seeing a whole group of like 30 or 40 of us, it's pretty overwhelming, but it is really, really positive, and it brings us all to life.
Yeah, one of the things Scott and I have said a couple times is we're both very jealous because we did these interviews with like Bill and Gary and Jean and now you, and we hear about these reunions, and I think, God, I wish I could be part of that and go to the reunion and say hi to all of our friends that we don't even know. But
and be a fly on the wall. Yeah,
right.
It's fun. And Halloween Haunt was a good part of it, but in general, I think Halloween Haunt worked with us for the first few years because we had that camaraderie already from working together in Ghost Town. Now it's so huge, but I think from what I understand from talking with other people at different events, that there is still that camaraderie among the monsters and the people who have worked there during haunt for a number of years. They see the same people every year. They may be working together in the same area or doing similar things. And there's a real camaraderie, I think, that started in the beginning and has continued.
That is so true. When we were putting together Season of Screams, we would go to a lot of their rehearsals or their practice runs, especially with the sliders. And at that time, they wanted to perfect their sliding. It was not recommended. It was not a Knott's thing. It was the Monsters that they wanted to be perfect in their slide. At the same time, they wanted to be able to protect the guests at a level that once they start that slide, if something should happen, they have to really put their body at a sacrifice. So they would train all year. And Dave and I were lucky to, when it wasn't Halloween time, in March, April, May, when we were out there filming them practicing, there's such a dedication of doing it right. And the friendships that developed, it's lifelong friendships. And we got a chance to be able to share that and experience that. So I only wish we could have been there back in your day.
Yeah, and it's neat that there are a number of us around, but I think, like I said, it sounds like it has continued, and that's fantastic.
I would like to ask you one more question, but it's based on 4 things. If you had 30 seconds to describe Bill Hollingshead and then Gene Witham, give us a 30-second of how would you describe Bill Hollingshead?
Bill was a genius at finding good talent, and he had lots of connections. And so he's the one who made the arrangements, from what I understand, with Seymour, Larry Vincent, for the very first Halloween haunt. So Bill Hollingshead was well connected. He got talent into the John Wayne Theater, as it was known at the time, that I don't know that anyone else could have found. Now, so Bill, he was our manager in entertainment. I saw him around all the time, and he really knew what he was doing. He knew how to surround himself with good talent.
Gary Salisbury.
Oh, Gary is my favorite. I call him my number 1 cowboy, and that's true. I met Gary when I was doing the Puff and Stuff show, and he and the other gunfighters were hanging out by the fence post where they always used to hang out. And another girl and I, who were from Puff and Stuff, we were walking by, and she said, "Let's say hi to the gunfighters." I said, "Oh, they're all really good looking. Let's say hi to them." So we had our pictures taken with them. They were real nice. But Gary, I worked with him when he was a gunfighter. He was then later my supervisor. And he was always very, very good to work with. But he was the ultimate cowboy. His picture was on posters all over town. But long after I left, he got into talent booking too. And he was able to book some fantastic talent for Knott's that drew huge, huge crowds, Menudo and some other groups later on. So yeah, Gary, but when I knew Gary, he was more of a gunfighter and more supervising not only Ghost Town talent, but later the talent in the Roaring Twenties area.
Yeah, and he brought in Elvira. So,
yes,
he really ran with it. Gene
yes.
Witham.
I'm sorry. Oh, Gene?
Yeah.
Gene, he was, like I said, he was funny, talented, really good improv actor, and really knew his stuff with the makeup. And without his makeup the first year, it would have been a very different and I think probably a more amateurish looking Halloween haunt. So his makeup kind of made it look more professional, I think, for sure. But yeah, as a person, he was just funny. You never ever knew what to expect out of him. If somebody was walking by, he'd just pick him up. He just did wacky things in Ghost Town as a gunfighter. Literally pick them up and hold them. I have a picture of him doing that.
And the last one, Walter Knott. Did you have any experience with Walter?
Absolutely. Walter Knott, as I said, from many years before I started, he knew how to treat his employees, and he always showed his appreciation for the employees at Knott's. He had said many times, the employees are what make Knott's Berry Farm a success, and for that reason, we have profit sharing. So every year, at the end of the year, everybody would get a profit sharing check. He distributed the profits among his own employees, no matter if you were full-time, part-time, seasonal, didn't matter. Everyone got a profit sharing check. But personally, I used to love walking around Knott's very early in the morning before the farm opened, because we'd be there early to get ready for our first shows and first gunfights. And there was Walter usually in his little golf cart. And he always said hello. He was very pleasant, very nice. He liked to see the other employees, and he was a quiet person, but very, very nice. So he always made sure to say hello whenever I was walking by his cart. I'm very lucky to have actually had contact with Walter.
That's amazing. Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit more about, you talked a little bit earlier about sitting next to Seymour while you were being made up. Larry Vincent. So, Bill, and we have Bill Hollingshead talk about him. We also have another interview from his writer. It was Douglas McEwen. Just told a wonderful story about this man that probably not too many people knew, other than his character Sinister Seymour. So it'd be great to hear, what kind of things did you guys talk about during that makeup session? It'd be fun to hear.
Well, I had remembered seeing Seymour on his crazy television program where he would show these horror movies and then insert his own very provocative and funny comments in the middle of these god-awful horror movies. I mean, they were really bad. And he tried to find these films that were particularly bad. So sitting next to him in the dressing room was a real thrill. But he completely disarmed us all. He wasn't acting like a big star. Even though I wasn't scared of him, but I was just a little bit, it's Seymour from television. But he just made us all feel very relaxed, very comfortable with him. I don't recall exactly what we talked about. I think we were just chit-chatting about the makeup and that kind of thing. But no, he was very, very nice, really nice person, and very relaxed. He talked to everybody. He was very chatty. And he enjoyed hanging out in the backstage area of the John Wayne Theater and just walking around the halls. There was a break room across the hall. He'd just sit in there and people would talk to him. He was really nice.
Were you at the 74 show, his last show?
Yes, but I never got to see his show because they were at times when we were doing our thing in Ghost Town. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see his show. But yes, I was there, and he was unfortunately not feeling very well. So he was much quieter the second year. He wasn't as chatty, or he was there, but he was, I could tell he wasn't really feeling quite as well as he had felt the year before. From what I understand from the show, he came on stage. Nobody would have known that he was very ill. And from what I understood, he really got a lot of positive energy from doing that show and made him feel, 100% better, which was great. So I'm thrilled that he was able to do it. Glad I got to see him the second year, but he was a little different the second year. The voice that he used on his television show is sort of snarky and kind of a little bit like Groucho. There was a little Groucho in it. It was kind of snarky sounding and making these snide remarks. He wasn't anything like that to talk to him. He was just very, very, very nice.
I think we were all fortunate to grow up in the 60s and 70s. And at that time, we got a chance to experience him on TV. And for us, it's always a treat because he started a new trend.
And it's funny you mentioned that because Douglas McEwen said that exact thing. He was like, Groucho Marx in a graveyard. That was his quote.
Yeah, no, that's a very good description. Yeah. But he was a little scary, but mostly snarky and funny.
You probably know better than we do, Diana, if there's anything else to cover that we haven't talked about with your career at Knott's and stuff. Anything else that you would like to talk about? We'd love to hear.
Well, the only other thing I can recall that we haven't touched on is the first Halloween haunt was, like I said, pretty basic. But in the second Halloween haunt, they started these peek-in shows.
Yes.
And the peek-ins were, or not peek-in, they were, they were really just teeny little stage shows that lasted for maybe 5 minutes. And they'd happen about every 15, 20 minutes, something like that. one of those shows was called Spidora the Spider Woman. And Julie Owen, who you may have talked to, or you may be aware of her role, she was the entertainment manager for many years, and that happened a lot later than these early Halloween haunts. But in 1975, she was Spidora. And so she had very long dark hair, and she had her head sticking out of a spider set. There were other sets too that were just sort of mad scientist, weird little sets. So the first year there was not as much happening, just a few monsters in town. The second year they added a little bit to it. The third year they added a little bit more to it, and so on. There were really no mazes at all in the early years, and that's what everyone thinks of with today's not Scary Farm is the mazes. The first maze would have been probably the Haunted Shack.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
In the very early years, and those guys were nuts. They were really funny and creative, and they figured out a way to make the Haunted Shack have a slightly different theme for Halloween Haunt those first couple of years. So I think that's the thing, that it started small, it started basic, and it grew a little bit each year, a few new things, and a few new things. And I'm glad that it's continued to grow and evolve and change, and new things happening. I think that's great, and that's how it should be. I can't think of anything else. You had great questions, and it's always fun to reminisce about the Halloween Haunt, and especially the early years when I was involved with that. So thanks again for asking me, and it's been fun talking about this.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough for being part of this and joining us on this fun little vlog we're doing for Season of Scream. So thank you so much. It was great meeting you finally.
Oh, yes.
I hope we can stay in touch through Facebook and other means. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's been an honor to finally meet you and to hear your stories. And again, I got to do a shameless plug. The reason we're doing this is bringing it back, is to bring an awareness for people that suffer with lupus. And all proceeds from our merchandising, our DVDs, all go to the Lupus Foundation of America, Wisconsin chapter.
That's fantastic. And good luck with all that you're doing. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much. Our way of
much.
giving back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have a great rest of your week, Diana, and hope we talk very soon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow. What an interview.
Amazing.
Another story or stories that are not only touching, but great stories. And she is a great storyteller.
Almost 20 years later, her story is still amazing and still relevant and still part of Knott's Berry Farm's history. It's I'm extremely grateful and happy that we were able to connect with her and do this interview.
And she filled in a lot of gaps. And her stories with Walter Knott were just great. And the same thing working with her original bosses and crew, Gary, Bill, Gene. It was so nice to hear more stories.
Yeah, absolutely. She's and you could tell how much she loves talking about, being part of that, historic event and being part of the history. She loves it and she loves to talk about it. So, Diana, if you're watching, thank you again so much for everything. Can't thank you enough. Boy, our final episode, number 7, we couldn't have gone out on a bigger note. We got the first witch of Halloween Haunt. That's amazing. So,
she was a trendsetter. She started the witch. The people that followed her after, they took over the torch, and it's fun. And again, hearing her stories, very touching. And it's very touching that this is our last episode for at least a year, or
right.
Let's knock wood. It's been great doing this with you. Like, once again, Dave, we've been together over 40 years, best friends, productions. We've done everything together. We work well together, and this has been an honor and a great memory for me, as well as great to the fans. And thank you all out there for everything that you have done in even purchasing Season of Screams. Watch us on YouTube, our merchandise. Thank you very much. We hope that we did our job in continuing telling an ongoing story with Screams Continue.
Thank you for your help keeping Season of Screams alive, the history of Not Scary Farms history alive. Leslie Iwerks said it best. She says, it's like a burning library. These stories will be gone forever someday when the people, pass on. But thank God for things like documentaries and things that we can do can save a burning library. So this information will be on YouTube until YouTube takes it off, if they ever do that. But I'm very proud that it'll be on there for the rest of time now for people to watch and actually learn and be able to understand who these people were that started this incredible event, Not Scary Farm. So, Scott, it's been great. You're 3,000 miles away now. You used to live here. I could get together with you during the week. We'd go see a movie. Nowadays, it's a little tougher, but at least thank God for Zoom and the internet. We can at least stay in touch.
Yeah, I do miss the connection in person, but if this is what we have to do right now, this is what we have to do. But I want to, again, reach out to all that are watching. Thank you for watching The Screams Continue.
All right, let's sign off our final episode.
Oh, no, it's this way. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thank you.